Welcome to the Plant-Based Podcast. Did you know that plants are truly amazing? Not only can you grow them and eat them, you can also wear them, drink them, nourish your skin with them, and so much more. Let Ellen and Michael inspire you to love plants as much as they do, as they chat with the movers and shakers in this wonderful plant-based world. So, let's dig in.
Hey guys, the sponsor for Series 16 of the Plant-Based Podcast is Grow This Not That, which is the Substack by myself, Michael Perry, also known as Mr. Plant Geek. This is the place where you can get all the hot happenings in the hort world directly to your inbox. Every Friday there's a hort report which brings together the influencer, industry and home gardener worlds, and every Wednesday I'll recommend 5 plants that you can grow, and subscribers get an extra free as well. All you need to do to find out more about my wonderful Substack called Grow This Not That is go to mrplantgeek.substack. Now, if you're part of the garden centre world, you might have heard the name Boyd Douglas Davies. That is one of the coolest names I know. Boyd has had a long career in the garden centre industry, most recently heading up the PR and communications at the popular British Garden Centres brand. He's now working as a freelance consultant and is about to become chairman at Green Fingers. And we thought it was a great opportunity to pick his brains about the world of the mighty garden centre that we think is a British institution. Hi.
I agree. Welcome, Boyd. It's good to see you and have you here on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me on.
I think we should let listeners know that Boyd is in full floral wear with a floral photograph behind him as well on Zoom.
Yeah, that's Patty's plum, Poppy Patty's plum. I took that photograph in, I think, 1991.
Cool.
At what was Hadspen House then, and of course is now known as the Newt. And that was on a trial there in their gardens, having been found by their friend Patricia, hence the name Patty's plum.
I love that. What a great story. That's
gossiping really about plants already. I love it.
That's what we're here for, Michael.
I know. So Boyd, I first we went for many years never having long enough conversation because, you know, Ellen, you and I talk about this all the time. You've got people that we kind of know that you only ever see in passing at trade shows, and you have these little clipped conversations and kind of, it wasn't until this year when we worked on the RHS trials, we were both on the judging committee, that we actually got to sit down and have some longer conversations. And we stayed in the same hotel, had breakfast together, and I just knew that I'd love to get you on the podcast and talk about garden centres because you seem like the best guy to chat about them. But I want to kind of wind it right back because I only know little bits about your career here and there, so I need you to fill in all of those gaps. But first up, little Boyd, was he growing up with plants? Tell us about your childhood.
There's a question. Yes, he was, because my grandfather was a seedsman up in Lancashire. So he was travelling around selling seeds to lords, ladies, gardeners across Lancashire. Yeah. And my father followed in his footsteps. And then he came down to Oxfordshire and he had a group of what were then garden shops in towns. So Banbury, Oxford, Bicester, places like that. So I grew up with my dad running garden shops. And then he started building garden centres. So he had a garden centre. And I'm told that my first working day photograph was at the age of 7, and I've got that picture of me in shirt and tie in my dad's garden centre in Stratford-upon-Avon. So I did grow up in amongst plants, and I've never left the world of plants ever since.
Oh, that's cool. That's the first
amazing.
thing you grew, by the way.
Say again?
Do you remember the first thing you grew?
First thing I grew. Well, I think I did the classic school stuff of, you know, the broad bean in a jar with the blotting paper on the side and the cress on the windowsill. And then in the garden, it was flowers. I wasn't a veggie grower as a youngster. I'm not much of a veggie grower now. really. I have mixed success on that. But I think flowers, and I think, we touched on the RHS trials, sunflowers, I think like orchids, discovered these giant things that soared up into the sky and enjoyed growing them because they are a really easy gateway plant, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, my answer is also sunflowers and beans. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, same. So, you grew up in this environment, but did you take any specific training, or what was your career path into what you're doing now?
Yeah, well, I left school at 16 and went to work straight away in the garden centre. I did a year working with Dad. Most of the time working with Dad. I think he sacked me several times in that first year, but he re-employed me. I think that was my mother's influence, get him back to work. And then I went to Pershore College of Horticulture when I was 17. So I went there to study horticulture and garden centre management, because in those days they ran a course specifically for garden centre management, development and training. And I went and did that at Pershore. Now, I have to admit, don't tell everybody, it's just a secret between us three. I actually dropped out after year 2 at Pershore. So I didn't complete the course.
We love an exclusive on the podcast.
Well, there we are. Not a lot of people know that. Probably me and the principal of Pershore, and now you two. And I went and dropped out and went back to work for my dad at the garden centres for a few years. So, I did the horticultural course, really, because year 1 at Pershore was very much core basic horticulture, plant idents and plant husbandry and so on. And then you go out into a year's placement in those days. So I went to work at the amazing Webs of Wychbold, my middle year placement. And then I decided not to go back to college. So I'm a dropout. But I think it was a good decision.
I was going to say, I think it worked out all right for you. Yeah,
yeah, it did. It was good. And sadly, that course doesn't run anymore, which is a real shame. I'd love to see that start again. Because it was good, and Pershore, middle of the country, very close where I live now. It's got a great facility there, and it'd be lovely to see that up and running again. But at the moment, it's not to be. So that was it. And then I worked for my dad for a few years, and then I went back to Webs, and I did 20 years at Webs. So that was how I ended up sort of in this full-on career in garden centres.
We definitely have a full-on, expert here. So I'm really looking forward to hearing, more about the garden centre world. Because for me especially, I know, Michael, you're involved in the commercial side a little bit more. I'm not. So it's really cool to be able to listen to what goes on behind the scenes and how it all works. So,
Okay.
So just to kind of in all the gaps for your career, so you were then at Webs, managing at Webs, and then you were at British Garden Centres for a few years, and now you're freelance.
Yeah, I was at Webs for 20 years. I know I hide my age really well, but I started on the nursery side. That's when I was 20 years there. So I was looking after sales on the production side. They used to grow a lot of shrubs, herbaceous and climbers, which they supplied across garden centres all over England. And then I moved on to a sales and marketing role for the whole garden centre, and I ended up being the chief exec. So I spent 10 years in the chief exec role at Webs. Then I left, and there was a 9-year period when I actually ran my own garden centre group. So I bought a garden centre in Studley in Warwickshire from Hilliers, and I then added to that, and I ended up running a group of 11 garden centres. And that's how I ended up joining British Garden Centres, because just before Christmas 2019, I sold the group to BGC. BGC is the biggest family-owned garden centre group in Britain, and it was great to merge our centres, which were predominantly in the middle of the country, with their group, which at the time was growing very, very quickly. They'd gone from 10 centres in 2018 to, by the time they bought our centres, they'd got to 58 centres in just 18 months, from 10 to 58, because they bought lots of the YVL centres as they became available. And our group joined, and my management team joined. And that was how I ended up starting at British Garden Centres and looking after PR, comms, and eventually the plants division as well. So good. And I did 3 years with them. So 3 years, and then a year or so ago, 18 months ago now, I set off doing the consultancy role on my own.
Excellent.
I mean, you're the man. Yeah, you've got all that experience to do the consultancy work for sure. And Michael said earlier on that, it feels like UK garden centres are kind of an institution, a British institution. And I get that because I live overseas part of the year and I don't think it's the same as in the UK. What do you think makes garden centres so special, and why are they special for you? Like, what do you love about them?
Love the variety. I think when you look at a garden centre 1 year to the next or 1 month to the next, it's constantly changing. So a garden centre space is worked hard. Right this time of year, we're in the autumn and now heading into a Christmas season, but that would have been a furniture and outdoor living space for many months through the summer. So you've got that constant shift. Garden centres are really good at keeping on trend with what's going on in garden furniture or gifting or plants. They keep moving all the time. They don't follow a set formula year after year. So I think that's what the public love. And that's what I love about working in garden centres, is every year is different and every season is different, not just because Easter comes a bit earlier or a bit later, but the weather plays such a big part. And that unpredictability of how a garden centre will actually start the spring, how it will run through spring, how long is spring, when does the summer season kick in, is it early June, late June? All those variables make it a really exciting place to work. And I think garden centres have embraced that need to change year on year and make their offer refreshed. And that's, I think, what people love, because in England and the UK, our garden is a constantly changing space, isn't it? The weather is a challenge if you're a gardener, it's a challenge if you're a garden centre operator. So I think our customers relate to a lot of what goes on in garden centres.
Okay, and that changes. We will touch on this a little bit later, but that changes obviously within the plant selection, but also the other selections of sundries and cake. Cake changes with the season, and we know that's synonymous with garden centres as well. But First of all, let's talk about the definition of a garden centre, because how does a garden centre differ to a nursery? Because some people may not realise, but also some garden centres do grow their own plants as well. So kind of what percentage of garden centres do grow their own, and which kind of import, and kind of how does that all sit when we're kind of defining what a garden centre is?
Well, there's supposed to be about 1,700 garden centres in the UK, and that's a retail outlet who is buying and selling plants, gardening goods, and other products. That would be your general definition. But the key point there is they're really buying and selling the plants. Now, there is the other end of the scale, which is growers who also open either short bursts of seasonal trading in the spring. They maybe open their gates and sell like a farmer sells from the farm gate. But you've got growers who are opening their nursery and selling, and they open and they are growers. The middle ground, and it's quite an interesting space right now, and it's an increasing number, are these garden centre operators who actually are running full-blown commercial nurseries now as part of their offer, and they're doing that in a way where the nursery will be either adjacent to the garden centre, and I can think of somewhere literally the nursery is at the back of the garden centre, or they might own a nursery probably quite local to their garden centre, but they're growing in a professional and commercial way, quite probably only for their own sales, and on a case, some of them own a nursery where they also sell to other garden centres. So that's a growing number, and I think there's probably 15 or 20 garden centre companies now who are seriously investing in nurseries for their own production. There is a lot of garden centres out there who have a small production area which satisfies some of their needs. But a retail nursery would predominantly only sell plants and gardening goods. The garden centre has the broader range, probably includes gifting, Christmas furniture, outdoor living items, as well as core gardening. So you've got the three things: nursery, retail nursery, and a garden centre.
And I'm guessing go on, Ellen. I was just going to say, just before we finish that, I guess it's quite obvious that it's since Brexit as well, isn't it, that those garden centres find it better to grow their own plants than go through the import, like traumas and extra costs. Is that what is driving more like nurseries out the back of garden centres?
I think it's securing the supply chain for sure. And I think when I was at British Garden Centres, we spent quite a bit of time and money buying a couple of nurseries, production nurseries, to secure the plants that we wanted to make sure we could have. Because at the end of the day, a good garden centre fundamentally lives on its garden departments. So the plants are the core of everything it does, and securing good plants at affordable prices is a real struggle when you've got to deal with all the import issues at the moment. And garden centres saw that coming with the changes that Brexit was inevitably going to bring. So that was part of it. But also the consumer, the customer, loves to know where things have come from, whether it be cheese, locally baked bread, or plants. And they want to know that the plants have been grown locally. The Green Miles issue about, well, how far have these plants come? Well, they've come from the nursery at the back of the garden centre over that fence. You can't get any closer than that. I even know garden centres where they grow the plants and let the customers walk into those greenhouses and pick the plants up straight off the ground. So there is 0 feet involved between
so
production.
See the commercial area as well. Yeah.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? It's a bit like going behind the scenes into a factory when you can walk into a nursery and see what goes on, the technology and the care and the time it takes to grow a plant. It's a fascinating thing to go and visit.
I remember we went to Howard's Nurseries, who do a lot of iris, but they do lots of other stuff. I think it was the first time I'd ever been behind the scenes, and I was blown away, like at how the processes and procedures and how it all comes out and ends up in in the gardens. I just thought it was absolutely incredible. The majority of people don't see that, do they? So I think it's good for people to understand where plants are coming from.
Yeah, and the time it takes. I don't think people realise how long it takes to grow plants. Even the quickest of annual bedding plants take a good few weeks. And you think about some of the shrubs and the trees that we sell in garden centres, and you think, how many things could you buy in the high street or in a shopping centre or online that have taken maybe 5 years or more to produce?
Right.
And how many of those things can you buy for about £60? You can't. But trees take that long to get to a tree that you'd go and buy in a garden centre, and yet they're 40, 50, maybe £70 for that tree. It's nothing, is it? It's £10 a year maybe of growing time to produce something. And it's a real love of labour for these growers to produce many of these plants.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Definitely.
It is interesting. Obviously, you've mentioned the changes since Brexit, but has there been any other significant changes that you've seen in garden centres over the years, other than Brexit?
Oh, yeah. The range of products is a big change over the years. If I think back to when I first worked with Dad in Banbury in the garden centre, we were a very traditional garden centre, very spring orientated. So what we sold was lots of garden plants, compost, food, all the garden chemicals. And then we were getting into, at those stages, I'm talking 40 years ago now, we were starting to sell a little bit of Christmas decorations, but we didn't really have much trade outside of that core spring into early summer season. And that had a big impact on things like staffing. So you would have staff for the spring, and then when you got to about middle of June, maybe the end of June, if it was a long spring season, you'd then have to say goodbye to lots of the staff because there just wasn't the business to sustain the wage bill. Nowadays, of course, garden centres are much more robust and they trade much more strongly through summer, autumn and winter, which does allow them to employ more people, which allows them to invest in their business a lot more because they make money, hopefully. Not many garden centres, in truth, make money every month of the year. It's really hard in January and February because the sales are so low, yet you've still got your overheads. But if you've got a good restaurant and good food facility, then that certainly helps in those very quiet months to bring in customers. And that's the biggest single change, is this year-round business that a garden centre now is. If it's successful, and the best ones in Britain are really good at this all-year-round trading, and they provide employment, they provide direct and indirect work for people all year round. You think about the bakeries and things that are in garden centres or servicing a garden centre, and they have a great January, February. That's all good. So that's the biggest change in terms of trading pattern. And of course, that is driven by lots of different products. I mean, I still see one of my college lecturers, he's still alive and kicking. And I always pull his leg and say, "You were pretty rubbish at college, weren't you?" And I won't say his name because it'd be embarrassing for him, but maybe I will. And I said, "You didn't tell me anything about soft play centres, cappuccinos, frappes, lattes, and you certainly never told me you could get welly boots in any colour except for green or black." And of course, 40 years ago plus, none of that existed, did it? None of those words. What was soft play 40 years ago? That was like not punching your mate too hard. That's soft play, wasn't it, 40 years ago? And, I don't know what a frappe was 40 years ago. It didn't exist. And all those things have come along in such a short period of time.
Oh, totally.
I love going to the garden centre.
Are you going to say the soft play?
I was going to, not for the soft play, just like... Well, I don't know. Maybe I will go to the garden centre for some soft play now.
But interestingly...
brilliant.
Yeah.
These garden centres, soft play is really good. It's really good because I think most garden centres have made their soft plays very young child friendly. Yeah. If you go to a soft play in a warehouse in an industrial estate on the side of a town, it tends to have play frame for everything from sort of 0 to 14 type thing, doesn't it? So it's got these huge, big, scary slides that are like 6 floors high and everything. Whereas if you go to a garden centre, it tends to be inside a traditional greenhouse type building. So it's lower and it's much more preschool friendly. So it's a really friendly, safe place. So I'm a big fan of soft plays in garden centres. I built quite a few over the last few years and I think they're great.
Oh, that's really cool. Michael, next time we go to the garden centre, we should engage in some soft play, buy some multicoloured wellies and have a frappe.
I'm going to drop you at the soft play as I walk in and collect you as I walk out. But I guess also, we're coming on to this a little bit later, but I guess people now go to the garden centre for a reason other than plants. And maybe they might buy plants as well, but maybe they won't. And that, I guess, is a very different kind of reason that people go there. And at some point, I'm thinking on my feet now, but at some point, does that mean that a garden centre almost becomes something that isn't a garden centre, but a lifestyle centre? Do you see what I mean? Like, are there some where the balance has tipped so far that plants are like even 30% of what happens? And does that then need a different name or something? Has there been any discussions around that anywhere? Because it's an interesting point. Yeah.
It is, isn't it? Some garden centres will say now that December is their busiest month of the year because of the Christmas department and the restaurant and all that and the gifting side. I usually, tongue-in-cheek, but quite but with a genuine concern behind it, say to them, that's because you're not good enough at plants. If December becomes your biggest month, it's because you're not good enough in May. But if you've got all that footfall in December, there's no reason why plants still can't be the biggest department in your business and gardening. Gardening should be half of what a garden centre does, if it's the right mix. And if you're bringing people in...
it is something that is a lifestyle centre, not a garden centre.
Yeah. But there are places now which don't call themselves XY Garden Centre. They now say XY Home and Lifestyle or XY Garden and Lifestyle. So there are some out there that use the different set of words around their name. So they have their brand and then they don't put garden centre directly on the end of their tag, really. But I've never had a problem with garden centres diversifying because I do think if it has anything about it, any reason to visit, be it for that cup of tea every morning.
That might not want to buy a plant and they end up buying a plant, but they wouldn't have been there for the cake or the soft plant.
It brings them through, and if it puts them in danger of buying a plant, that's a result, isn't it? If it brings somebody in every week of the year, the chance of them buying plants and seeds and bulbs is phenomenal. If they only come in and visit maybe just the Christmas grotto and they never come back, well, that's probably because you're not doing enough to communicate with them about all the other wonderful things. So that initial footfall needs to be encouraged to return. And one of the big things we've seen, and it's really great in the last few years, is the return of houseplants.
Okay,
If you go back pre-COVID, houseplants had almost disappeared out of garden centres. They really had given up, which was a real shame. It's a department that I've never given up on. I've always believed in houseplants and always had a houseplant department. But when I was on that journey, 2011 to 19, buying garden centres, the number of garden centres I bought who didn't trade in houseplants other than Mother's Day and Christmas was the majority. Most of them had given up. And I reintroduced houseplants as a category, as an all-year-round category to them. And since COVID and since people realising the value of their own personal, mental, physical well-being and actually the value of greenery and plants inside, houseplants, thank goodness, have really come back strong, and garden centres are offering great range. And British grown, loads of, some really good British growers now of houseplants, which again, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have been buying any houseplants from a British grower. So it's really good.
Okay. I knew this would be a good chat, and I got all sorts of other supplementary questions. Can I ask a quick thing about, you talk about the different seasons of where the sales are, but I feel something, particularly having this discussion at QVC last week, autumn is really a key gardening season, but the general public, the amateurs, the beginners, do not realise that. They think the key gardening season is something like Easter weekend, which kind of it is, but actually for great success, planting in the autumn is amazing. Do you think there's enough around that?
I think we've become a nation of instant gratification, haven't we? People want to see a quick result, and a lot of autumn gardening is investing in the following year.
Yeah,
so much of what you do is, yes, you put your bulbs in for spring. You maybe top that out with some winter pansies or violas, which gives you that bit of instant colour. But the nation has become a bit of a quick fix gardening nation, and autumn is all about investment, really, the work. Although, I've got involved with loads of, over the years, design of gardens, helping friends and talking to customers. And I always say to people, don't go and buy all your plants in one go. Don't go into the spring, into a garden centre or get on QVC. Don't fall for it. Don't buy everything Michael sells you in one day, I say. Go back every month. Because if you go back every month to a garden centre, you see great plants all year round. Look at like Calicarpa gerardiana right now. I've just bought one to put in the garden because it's fantastic. Those purple berries that look brilliant at this time of year. Well, you wouldn't see that in a garden centre in spring, would you? You just wouldn't. If there was one on the bench, it won't be in berry, the leaves are indifferent, it wouldn't catch your eye, it wouldn't excite you. So I think what we've got to try and do is get people to realise that a visit once a month to a garden centre and just buy what catches your eye then will create an all-year-round garden. If you go and buy a sarcococca, when are you going to go and buy that? You're not going to go and buy that in the middle of the summer because it's nothing, is it? There are some plants that are great. Choicea Sundance, my favourite go-to evergreen.
Oh my God, that's my least favourite.
I was going to say, Michael, every time we see that, Michael's like, I hate that. I hate that plant.
And I don't hate any plants.
In December, when a bit of sunshine hits a Choicea Sundance and you're looking out your kitchen window and you're stood there making a cup of tea and it's out there and the sunshine hits a Choicea, you can't but smile. It's just a winner every day.
Michael, you need some Choicea in your life, clearly.
I'm not usually a plant snob, but
I can see a Christmas present coming. Michael.
He'd hate me or you if we sent him one. I know that you travel quite a lot, so it's interesting to know your views on how garden centres overseas differ to those in the UK. Like, what's your thoughts on that and your observations?
Wow. I have travelled a lot. I get to travel in Europe quite a lot still nowadays, and I've been lucky. I've been to America and Australia. And the Far East and things, and seeing garden centres. They vary so much. In Europe, garden centres seem to be garden and pet centres, particularly when you go to France and Holland and things. You get big pet departments there as well. But they don't seem to be, I don't think they are as good, dare I say, as the British garden centre. And I think what you do get is you get some huge, big differences. So you get either very small specialist nurseries over in Holland, where if you go to Holland, everybody seems to be a grower. I'm amazed actually garden centres exist, because everybody's a grower and everybody's cousin and brother and neighbour's a grower. So why would you go to a garden centre when you can just nip next door and get plants? But you see a difference there. Then you go to America and you get complete extremes, because you've got East Coast, West Coast, and in the weather takes a big hit. So when the weather hits in the winter time on the East Coast, and they just clear the plant centres. So they go from a fully stocked spring, summer to nothing, and they clear the places out. They don't seem to, dare I say, they don't seem to do things like food as well in the garden centres in America. And they tend to specialise. Like I went to one or two who are brilliant at Christmas, but others who just go, well, we just don't do Christmas because we just really close down. So they're still probably like England was 20 or 30 years ago in some ways. The Australian garden centres, I've been lucky to go out twice to Australia. And the first time I went out, which was in the mid-90s, they were very plant-orientated. And then I went out in 2013, and my goodness me, they'd really upped their game. And they were really good plant and gardening centres, really high-end. I remember going to Tim's garden centre in Sydney, and he was selling his own label compost, and it was about £10 a bag, when we were probably selling compost for £3 a bag or something like that over here. And I'm like, wow, Tim, you're charging premium for this, mate. And he said, but it's the best compost in the world. And they really valued
confident in Australia,
quality. Right? And he said, why would I put my name on a bag of indifferent compost? My name's going on the best in the world. And I have to be honest, I came back and copied his idea and created our own compost. And we sold that compost for more than I'd ever sold compost, and it was the very best. We put everything in it. It was real quality. So I think Australia,
sure.
It was everybody loved it. It was a great product. And I think Australia is the place, if you're going to go and look for a garden centre model to go and look at the moment, I'd go back to Australia. They love food, they love production. So most of the garden centres have got their own kitchen gardens, proper kitchen gardens, not just show gardens where the chefs walk out every day and they're harvesting and using that fresh on dishes. And I don't see that. I can only think one garden centre in the UK where I know they're doing that seriously. So they really blend lifestyle and food and growing into one really sort of harmonious space in Australia.
Interesting.
But English is still the best. British still the best.
I agree.
Well, I guess that sort of doesn't cover my next question, which is like, what do you think we do better in the UK, and what could we do better? Which I think we've already answered the second part, but what do we do better than overseas ones? Like, are we more specialists with the plants? Do we showcase plants better? What do we do better?
I think we are better all year round, and that's our climate allows us to garden, doesn't it? Pretty much all year round. So we're probably better than most of the others that I see in that sense. I think we are better at investing in the garden centres often, the infrastructure, the quality of the garden centres. A lot of the garden centres in Europe, some are, full on what you recognise like our style, but lots are quite a long way back behind what we're doing. So I think we make sure we have a good customer experience, and then they're pleasant and warm and dry places to visit. And I think we do offer a great range of plants in the UK. I think the range is huge compared to other places where I go to, and they seem to have quite a narrow range. They might claim it's like boutique-y by only having a small selection, but I think it's quite limiting. And I think gardens are so different, aren't they? Everybody has their own personality they want to put into a garden. So range is good over here. So I think that's what we do really well. I think what we sometimes forget to do is, probably we touched on it almost earlier about the nursery side. We forget to tell people where that plant's come from. I think we're a bit shy at really explaining what goes into producing a lovely plant. And then also the joy you're going to get from that plant. We let people think sometimes, well, that's quite a lot of money. That's £10 or £12. Well, that's a plant that's going to last a lifetime. And that's, no money at all. So that's probably what we're bad at, is really sharing our own passion with our customers.
Okay.
That sort of brings us on to the next question, actually. Is it just all about selling, or do you think garden centres have a responsibility to educate people as well, not just about the joy of gardening and plants, but how to garden, like the peat-free situation, all of that. Do you think that garden centres should do more?
Yeah, I think garden centres have got a real big opportunity at the moment to become the real community space for gardening and gardeners and garden interested. You know, you don't have to. There's a danger that people think they're not a gardener. You know, often I hear people say, "Oh, I'm not a gardener. My granddad had green fingers, or my gran, or my mum," and they dismiss their own ability. And it's not actually about ability; it's about time more often than not. You know, have you got time to pop out and water that hanging basket when it needs it? That's probably the biggest fail that you're having with your hanging baskets. It's not you can't grow them; it's just you don't have that spare bit of time. And now people work from home. And that hybrid life does allow more of that. And I think that's a big plus side of the new style of working. But I think garden centres, if they don't grab that opportunity to become the real knowledge hubs, then they're going to miss out. And there is so much to learn. You know, right now, understanding the differences between peat-free and peat mix compost is really, really tricky. You know, it is different to grow in these new mediums. And the garden centres I work with, and when I speak to anybody now, I say, you've got to get growing with peat-free compost yourself, because you've got to learn the differences that it comes with. And then once you learn that, you can share that. Because with all respect to the internet, the problem is you just don't know which bits are true and which bits are not on the internet nowadays, do you? There's so much content that you can go down a rabbit hole and discover you've gone exactly the wrong way. So you actually want to go and talk to real people about real experiences. So I think garden centres do have a place to play that role, and a great opportunity, because everybody loves talking about gardening, don't they? You know, and I think garden centres sometimes say to me, "Well, we haven't got enough staff. Staff cost us lots of money." And I talk about, you don't need to be putting lots of staff into that knowledge exchange. Just create a forum and an opportunity for your customers, you know, your loyal advocates, to come into a garden centre on a Saturday morning and be ambassadors for you. You know, just provide some quality free cup of coffee and a space and say, you know, free garden club here every Saturday morning or every Wednesday afternoon, whatever suits your customer base. And then suddenly you've got gardeners talking to gardeners, and then they get all excited and they say, "Come on, I'll go and show you." And then they take you out to the plant centre and they start picking up plants and giving them to your other customers and saying, "Here you are, buy this and buy this and buy this." And I'm sure there's a whole community out there who would just love to be invited in to get excited. And you can't do that anywhere else other than a garden centre. And why not go to the garden centre, and why go to the village hall for a gardening club when you could go to your local garden centre?
I love that. All of the enthusiasm. And also, so listeners could know, Boyd's arms are everywhere while he's saying this. Super enthusiastic about it. We love it.
I get very wound up. I'll get very wound up about it all. So, yeah. It's such a lovely thing, isn't it? Plants and gardening, and even when it doesn't quite work out. Michael's sitting on his hand.
I got another question, dear. Demographic. I feel like demographic of the consumer has changed, and like when I was a kid, or when I was a teenager more so, it would not have been cool to be seen in a garden centre. These days, I don't think the teenagers mind at all. And when I walk in a garden centre, I see all different ages and demographics. Do you also see that as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then I'm going to ask you about houseplant shops after that. So
yeah. Well, so my one of my goddaughters, she's now 17. So 2 years ago, her 15th birthday, she gave me a list of houseplants she wanted for her birthday. I mean, that is just immense, isn't it? A 15-year-old asking for houseplants by name that she wanted to add to her collection in her bedroom at home. I mean, I was just like, this is just unreal. And it's a big, big thing, isn't it? You know, plants, about the environment. I mean, there's so few things that we can do things to reduce our impact on the environment. And that's the type of car you drive, or whether you drive or not, or things you wear, or where you buy your stuff from, or what stuff you buy. But there's one thing you can really do to improve the environment, and that's grow plants. And I think younger people are really conscious of their own space and their own future, and they want to make a difference. And not just I'll do things slightly less, they want to be additive, and that's what gardening is, isn't it? Or houseplants in the house. So that's why younger people have got involved. And I think I take that right back. I know that the horrible time of COVID made so many people who lived in accommodation without any outdoor space, they suddenly realised what they were missing, didn't they? Because suddenly it was taken away from us all, and they want to create that indoor space, and they want to create plants and greenery, and they get that they're great. And when we were in the lockdown, when the garden centres were back open, but restaurants and nightlife and everything else was shut, I was serving a young couple with a houseplant. They came into the garden centre and they wanted a Kentia palm. And so they knew what they wanted. And I took them to the houseplant department and I said, here we are, we've got this one and this one and this one. And they looked at me, and the lady looked at me dead serious. And she was like, no, these aren't what we're looking for. We want something much bigger. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, we've got some bigger ones in the restaurant space. I can take you to see them, and you could buy one of those. And we went up to the restaurant.
Sell off the set. Such an entrepreneur. I love it. Hustle.
We had these big palms. But we went up to look at this palm, and I showed her the palm, and it was £149. And I said, you need to look after this because it's a lot of money. And I was so got it wrong, because she turned around to me and she said, that's not a lot of money. That's less than a night out. And you suddenly think, wow, that actually,
I could go out cheaper than that. What the hell?
I don't spend 150 quid on a night out.
But that's it. I thought, well, then our pub of £4.50 a pint, I would be there a long time to spend that much. But that was her mindset, was that it was less than a night out. And I guess
and if she
the time
didn't
you
know
taxes,
the value of plants, she wouldn't be surprised at that price. If you don't know the value of plants, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
If you've not grown up with this whole thing about plants are cheap. And it was 6 foot tall. It was a gorgeous palm, and she loved it and she bought it. And I thought that's what we've got to remember in garden centres, is that actually people do love what we've got. And we're probably, as an industry, and I criticise garden centres for trying to find the smallest, cheapest option all the time, when actually people out there nowadays want something with impact. They want something to make a difference. You don't go and buy a little 2-foot Christmas tree and put it beside your television in your living room if you want a 6-foot tree, do you? You buy a 6-foot tree. And people want big house plants. They want big impact. Ellen's got something poking out the side of the screen here that I can see you've got a big house plant there, haven't you, and things. So, there we go. There we go. You wouldn't want a little thing in a little 3.5-inch pot, would you? That wouldn't do the job.
Likes it big. Yeah.
I like big plants.
I'll get told off for that later. Let me pick this up. I'd like a comment on houseplant shops. Obviously, they all came along. Quite a few independents. Quite a proportion of those are now closing. Even little dobbies came along with their high street stores. Some of those are now closing as well. Why didn't they succeed? Should they have had outdoor plants as well? What do you think about specific houseplant shops? I'd really like to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's a shame that they're not surviving. I've seen some really good ones out there, and I have also seen some really awful ones, to be honest. You go to somewhere, they just don't clearly know how to look after plants. And they may be in a very dark shop with very little natural light. Now, I know our houses don't have, we're not all living in greenhouses, so there's no reason why that should go wrong. But I think what happens is these spaces, often they turn the heating off. So these little shops, maybe in the winter, they go down to turn the heating off at 5 o'clock when they go home. And of course, they forget that the shop could get really cold. And I think that's what happens more than lighting, is it's a climate, but cold climate. I think I went to look at a little Dobbies that is, as you say, closing the other day. And the one I went to see actually had a coffee shop in it. And I've always thought that's the perfect combination, is that you actually have that regular reason to visit. Great coffee, and maybe some interesting pastries, somewhere where you go every day, every week. And therefore you get back in danger of seeing lovely houseplants. But that's also,
nice. There are a lot of places to get coffee these days as well. Do you know what I mean?
But there's a lot of bad coffee.
Another sector.
Yeah. There's a lot of bad coffee.
There's a lot of bad coffee out there, isn't there?
The majority don't notice it. Do you know what I mean? And
I love coffee.
The convenience of a coffee, not the taste of it. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, well, it's the taste and the texture, isn't it? I mean, it drives me bonkers. Anyways, the quality of flat white is awful.
Sorry, I threw you off there. We got in a coffee.
No, but I think if you can get in an urban space, a great houseplant space, I don't know it needs to really be doing a lot of garden plants, but whether it should be doing herbs and grow your own windowsill, which you would perceive maybe as garden plants, but they could be grown on the windowsill. So micro herbs, mini leaves, and all those sort of things as well, which they really can sit on that kitchen windowsill and connect in with people. But I think it's great when you do see a really good urban houseplant shop. And I think they're a great stepping stone into then the bigger garden centre when people start to move out of their apartments and they move to a place with maybe a bit of outdoor space. Then they start to explore the outdoor. But there is life stages, isn't there? So people in their 20s predominantly are, and a big sweeping comment, but most people in their 20s are living in accommodation which they don't own. So actually digging a hole, even if they've got an outdoor garden, is not big on their agenda, investing in that space. But growing above ground in pots and baskets and planters is definitely a trend now that 10 years ago, people didn't spend... Yeah, the outdoor yard was just a dump, wasn't it? If you had a back door and an outdoor space as a renter, it was actually a nuisance. Most people didn't want that, but now they do.
But one thing you said there, you said about outdoor plants. I feel like there's a real gap in the market for balcony gardening and a garden centre that really, really appeals to that. Because, look in here, so many apartments, no one's got any window boxes or balcony planters. We don't even sell many of those planters that hook over the side. It doesn't have to be that you've got to drill in a window box. That is a massive hole that could easily be replicated in those houseplant shops because they're urban, they'll be in the cities, etc. So I feel like that is a big gap, I have to say.
Yeah. And I think back onto the European piece, the Europeans do that much better than we do.
And we'll be way over time today.
I know.
She's always like, when we get to 40 minutes, I can tell she's twitchy. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. You are right, because in Europe you see it so much more. I went to the. This is a different world. Part of what I do is I advise government as well on horticulture and how it can make a difference. And so I went to the Home Office for a meeting the other day, and we sat in the Home Office in central London, looking across the road at building with balconies, but the balconies were about 3 inches wide. They were just that pseudo railing and the doors open inwards. I went, you just got to change the planning permission rules to give everybody, whatever floor they're on, ground or 6 or 16, give them some outdoor space where there's just enough room to operate. And also, a big campaign, and I'm going to get you to support this, Michael, is we should ban outward opening windows. You shouldn't have windows which swing out, because you can't have a window box when you're going to knock all the flowers heads off, can you? Let's go old-fashioned, let's go sashes, or let's go European and open windows inwards. Then you can service the window box outside.
But even if you look at the Barbican, I love the Barbican because it was built with space for window boxes.
With planters. Yeah. Should be part of the regulations.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry. Melon, back to you.
That's okay. It's all good. It's super interesting. We're coming towards the end because obviously I'm getting twitchy at the time. But you obviously been to just about every single garden centre there ever was and is. Do you have any must-visit garden centres to recommend to listeners?
That's a cruel question, isn't it? Because I'm going to leave out so many good centres now. I mean, if you want a beautiful plant and garden centre, Ashwood Nurseries in Kings Winford near Wolverhampton, sort of west of Birmingham, that is probably the most consistently wonderful plant-orientated garden centre I've ever been to. It does lovely food. One of the things I love is it only offers a small range of garden goods. And their attitude is, we only sell what we recommend. So we don't leave confusion for a customer. So it's really easy to go and buy things, and their plants are outstanding. If we were talking about urban, just picking up on that whole somebody does well for urban, then Bourneville Garden Centre in the middle of Birmingham, the Bourneville Garden Village. It's a really little compact garden centre. I reckon half the customers walk to it, shop and walk home. Yeah. So it's really servicing a local community, and it's really petite and bijou. And then if you want one with a gorgeous view, then if you go over to Rutland, the county of Rutland Nursery has a restaurant. I know we talked about restaurants earlier, and coffee. It has a restaurant to die for that looks out over Rutland Water, and it's got a lovely, lovely planted courtyard, gorgeous courtyard for sitting in. So you can sit out in they're probably the only one I really could think of where you sit in a beautiful garden to eat outdoors. And so many garden centres have an outdoor patio and they don't plant it up or they don't make it into a showcase. Whereas the guys at Rutland have really done that.
The car park is an opportunity as well. You know?
Yeah. First time. Yeah, it was Stratford Garden Centre. I was there the other day and they've planted up the car park in autumn colours, autumn, winter colours. So they're clearly replenishing it and using it as a display case. And that's brilliant. You step out the car and you're instantly inspired. You think, wow, what's that?
You already see something you want to buy.
Yeah, you know, you're on the way straight to the plant department. First stop, straight to plants to fill a trolley. So those are all good ones. I mean, there's so many good garden centres.
You can't have any more. We've run out of time. Sorry. Bye. No, I knew this would be excellent, and I knew we'd talk for hours, but we do need to bring things to a close. But tell us about your big news. Green Fingers, you are taking on chairmanship, right?
I am. Yeah, so the Green Fingers charity, I've been involved with 25 years. It's been going on. So Richard Jackson founded it, a chap you know well, Michael. So he created the charity 25 years ago, and he asked me then to support it at the launch. And ever since I've been close to it, I've loved it. And the trustees approached me a year ago and asked me if I would take on the chairmanship, which happens this week. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's a great time to join the charity as chairman with their 25 years gone and 25 years to look forward to. Not that I will be chairman for the next 25 years, I promise. But they create these wonderful gardens in hospices around the country for children, very much children-focused space, but children, the family, the carers. And they've done over 70 gardens in the first 25 years. And there's still loads more space to be developed and planted and created. So we've got a lot to do over the next few years, but really looking forward to supporting the team there and helping them as much as I can.
Excellent work.
Yeah, excellent work. So, Boyd, where can listeners find out more about you?
They can track me down on social. I think at Boyd Douglas Davis or something is on Insta.
Don't tell me you don't know your handle.
Well, you know what I'm like. I just don't. That's that one. And on Facebook, weirdly, I am at Choyp16, CHOYP16. Don't ask about that story, Michael. We have not got long enough to go into where that name came from.
We'll get you on the school again to tell us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for bringing smiles and plants and flowery shirts and flowery pictures to the podcast. It's been really, really interesting.
Pleasure.
And I know listeners will really enjoy it. So we appreciate you spending the time.
Totally.
Thank you.
Been great talking to you both. Lovely to see you.
See you soon, Dave.
Bye. Bye.
I don't know why I suddenly started shaking.
Why did you start shaking? What does your T-shirt say? Hello.
Hello, botanic friend. It also says on the back. It's from a Dutch nursery called Van Sonnencoat, and it's a little promo T-shirt that I wear to the gym. Don't tell them, but it's on the back somewhere as well. But it's quite a nice colour. Don't you think it goes with my skin tone?
It goes with your skin tone. I tell you what, you look like staged because you've got all your plants behind you and a lamp shining on the plant, and then you've got your Hello Botanic friend on with.
Well, I've already given you an awful tour of my box-filled apartment, but I moved on yesterday into like a 2-bedroom with more light as well. I'm paying a lot more money for more sun, but that is how attached I am to the light Ellen. So yeah, and but it finally gives me a bit more autonomy, a bit more different spaces, and I can finally have a nice backdrop to my Zoom calls with you, darling. Because before, it was like an awkward cupboard and a naked calendar that I had to take down if I had a special business meeting. I never took it down for you, obviously, but yeah.
No, you didn't. I thoroughly enjoyed your calendar.
But no, it's nice to have different spaces. But honestly, after I'm on this call, I need to unpack all the boxes. And Ellen, in my old age, like we've talked a little bit about age, and we're noticing a lot of differences to our mind, body, and soul. One thing I'm really noticing is I never used to procrastinate. I used to just get on with it. Yeah. But now procrastination is my best friend.
Yeah, I get it. I'm down with it. Like I'm procrastination station every day.
I pride myself on just getting on with stuff, but I'm just like, honestly, I think I'm just tired. It's the seasonal change.
It is. It's the seasonal. I think it's our bodies telling us that, just take it a little easier.
Yeah.
You don't go full on in all of the time.
I guess so, yeah. I don't know. I think I feel like everyone is having a midlife crisis at the moment. I guess.
Well, even if they're not midlife.
We're all similar ages, I guess, yeah. But I don't know. So I'm enjoying my rebirth anyway.
Do you think like midlife crisis is a real thing?
I think it really is, because like, not to be weird and morbid about it, but there is a point where, she's doing yoga for me. You've never stretched for me before, Ellen Berry.
I'm stretching for you, darling.
Oh, wonderful. You are in a good mood. I'm surprised you're in a good mood, because we had your stunt double last week, didn't we, Julia?
You did. She did amazing.
I thought you'd be off in a huff because we got a standing gossip.
I couldn't possibly be off in a huff with her.
It was very funny. So I know why you'll make an extra effort to be funny and stretch yourself in front of me.
I was genuinely stretching my leg.
Yeah, well, Julia never stretched for me, so.
Are you impressed?
Oh, 100%. I'm sorry, but you did ask me a question, right? On another it was something about midlife crisis. Is that a real thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, because like, this is weird, Ellen, but obviously we're more than halfway to being dead. Do you know what I mean?
Great. Thanks for that.
It's very likely. It's very likely, isn't it? It is very weird to think that, but that is the fact.
Yeah.
That moment, that thought really does shift something in your mindset, doesn't it? Do you know what I mean?
I was reading something once that when you get to your 40s, many generations ago, you wouldn't have made it much past your mid-40s because, obviously it didn't live as long as we do now. Yeah. So it's something in our genes or in our DNA that literally flips into thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to die. Yeah, because we're at that age. But actually we're not. We've got maybe another 40 years if we're lucky. That's apparently where the midlife crisis comes from.
Aha! I was thinking it was more like thinking you're halfway, but you've made it a lot more morbid.
No.
Just about that.
My point being is that it is halfway, You've got another 40 years, hopefully, whereas in years gone by we wouldn't have. So it's a great thing to have another 40 years.
But yeah, I do think it is a thing, really. And I guess it also jolts you in a very lovely way to then make the most of life and make the most of your health as well. And that is only a good thing,
Yes, absolutely. Only a good thing. So, midlife.
Friend of the podcast, Jenny, Jenny from Wigan.
Yeah.
She's been really getting into fitness last few weeks as well, and she kind of was talking about it, and that's so nice to see that lighting up in someone as well. And I'm sure she'd love that she's got a name check as well.
Yeah, she's absolutely lovely.
Ellen, sorry, this is a bit off thingy, but have you got nice teeth?
Did you say I have got nice teeth?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
I never looked at your teeth before in such detail, but I don't know, you just got a lot of them today. I think it's because you're in a good mood. I'm seeing a lot of teeth.
I'm smiling a lot. Thanks.
No, they're really cool.
What? Once I was on...
literally, you do not, like Ellen, I'm about to show you my teeth. Do not do that thing and be English and polite and say, oh no, they're lovely, really. I'm going to show you my teeth. They are awful teeth because look, they're everywhere.
What do you mean they're everywhere? Hang on, I have to get close.
Shut up. This is awful teeth.
Why don't you get an
They don't look like yours at all. Look.
They don't look like mine. No, I'm very lucky.
I love that genetically, you really cannot criticize my teeth because you've grown up in England with the polite culture, and you're never ever going to admit that my teeth are wonky and everything.
I did just say though, this was my roundabout way of saying they're wonky. Why don't you get an Invisalign? That's what I just said. Like, why don't you get like a brace?
Yeah, look
a brace.
Look at that. Look at that.
Actually, you're showing me your bottom teeth, and you never see your bottom teeth because when you smile, it's your top teeth, and there's nothing wrong with them.
Well, yeah, I guess in isolation, both sets are nice in isolation, but when they're together, they just don't work. But no, honestly, I'm bloody lucky that the rest of me is so handsome. Anyway, how are you? What have you been up to, you old turnip?
I'm all right, thanks very much. What have I been up to? I've just been to Atlanta, which was really nice. The leaves had all changed colour, so they look really pretty.
Oh.
I've been writing my new magazine column for Amateur Gardening.
I think it's a novel.
My new novel. Oh, gosh.
What's your column going to be about, young Ellen?
It's going to be all about kind of making things with plants.
Oh, okay.
For wellness. Like, well, it is about wellness, but like doing things that's good for your wellness with plants.
Well, I thought you're shit at craft.
Huh? Who said it was craft? I didn't say craft.
I'm so going to get punched.
And also, I'm not shit at craft.
You're not patient at craft, let's put it that way.
I don't
and
know.
And nor am I. That's how I know I'm safe here.
My midlife crisis has made me more patient.
Ellen, I always wanted to write a craft book called Crafting with Big Hands. Like for people that really aren't good at crafting. Have you written your first one then, babe?
I've written my first one, yeah. That's for the December issue. I think it's December the 21st.
Yeah? Yeah. Can you tell us what it is or not?
Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to.
Oh, tell us anyway.
That's so naughty. So it's going to be about
it's a clue.
Magnesium bath salts and petal-infused bathing.
Oh, nice. I love to bath with yuzu fruit.
With a yuzu fruit?
Yeah, it's the Japanese citrus.
Yes.
It's like a kind of like an orange grapefruit. It's not a hybrid, but imagine something that is orange grapefruit, kind of like merging. And they use it in a lot of different flavorings in Japan. Lovely sauce you can have with different meats and veg called ponzu that is made with yuzu. But also I think it's in the spring when the fruit's in season, you have a yuzu bath. So you use the peel of yuzu like in the bath to give you fragrance, but also the oil that is released from it is really good for your skin as well. It's kind of like a little ritual almost. And my friend Nicole always claims to have the only fruiting yuzu tree in London. But she is prone to exaggeration, so I think there might be others. But equally, she does give me fruit every year. But it's really, and I can't remember when it crops. It always crops at a time of year that really confuses me because it's something like even in March or something.
Okay.
So it's open over the winter or something. Yeah, I don't know, but I'll have to look it up. But yeah, so yuzu, yeah. Okay,
well that sounds cool, but mine's about lavender and roses, so a little bit more likely that you can grow them.
That's cool. Oh, that's nice. What else is happening?
Well, I wanted to know where you've been because you've told us about your T-shirt and travel. So where have you been recently?
Last week I was in France at the Cyclamen Trials. That was cool. The week before I was in Holland, the Netherlands, trade show and different meetings, recorded the podcast. Quite a full-on week actually. And just I'm at the end of the year, just starting to book up. January is already pretty full with different trade shows, content creation, the life of an industry influencer, Ellen Mary. Oh my God! Do you have the same problem? Actually, this is a discussion point to enter.
Okay.
Someone asks you what you do. What the hell do you say?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that's quite tricky. So I've sort of, for me, up until this point, I've kind of just said writer, broadcaster, gardener. But I'm sort of moving more into like wellness and nature therapy. So I'm starting to kind of talk about that a little bit more. So sort of saying sort of nature therapy, but I provide talks and books and stuff about it as well. But there's never a simple answer.
You could call yourself a wellness practitioner. Is that cool?
Then that doesn't involve nature in any way.
Yeah, but it gets people off your back, doesn't it? And I don't think people really listen to the answer anyway, do you know what I mean? Unless the thing, like, if I ever, this is so cringe, isn't it? If I ever, like, say, like, TV presenter or do something in TV, everyone's ears always, why is everyone so excited about TV? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know, but I have definitely noticed over the past couple of years how many people clearly just they're doing things online because they want to be a TV presenter. And it's like, it's not that amazing to do. It's not that
like, you don't necessarily get that many eyes on you compared to, being on a YouTube video or here, there, or over. So it is a very, really funny. So I think I don't know, because then when you say influencer, that doesn't sound like meaty enough for some people. I guess it also depends who's asking. Like if it's your mum asking, you're probably going to say something more traditional.
Yeah.
I kind of like say product developer and content creator.
Okay.
But then I realise when I say that, I don't develop any products these days. I'm kind of like about Thompson Morgan days when I say that, but it's like, I don't know, or speaker, presenter, host or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, and also you do, I mean, there has to be something to do with plants in that response.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? Like
I'll just say with plants at the end, in brackets.
Yeah, with plants. That's what I mean. So I could say wellness practitioner with nature practitioner. I don't know.
The practitioner's nice, isn't it?
It sounds very posh, doesn't it?
Oh, wow.
Practitioner.
Well, Mary, I've got 2 balconies.
And what are you going to be putting on your 2 balconies?
I don't know. I'm not sure yet.
Well, I have a balcony and then a small area at the front of my house. I planted loads of bulbs out recently, and the squirrels came along and literally dug them all up.
Oh, that's nice.
No. And they were all over the path. So I took the dog out last night and I opened the front door, and I don't even know when they would have done it. And there was just bulbs everywhere. Holes in the soil, bulbs everywhere. So that was not fun.
What happened to your arguments with the housing thing?
Well, I
really need the toilet. So why don't you tell listeners while I go to the toilet? Okay,
well,
go for it, Melon.
It's all gone quiet. So I live in a homeowners association neighborhood in America where I am half the year, and the outside space is kind of governed by the HOA. So even though it's your land, there's certain things you can and can't plant or things you can and can't do. It blows my mind because I planted some plants out the front of our garden, and we had numerous letters from the HOA saying we needed to pull them all up because A, they're not what they want, and B, we didn't ask permission. As you can imagine, I'm not going to be asking permission to plant something on my own in my own garden. So we left them all. And I haven't heard a thing from them for months and months and months. So the plants are growing, they look really pretty. There's hostas and ferns, begonias, bulbs. I mean, it's just absolutely lovely. There's lots of colour. Nothing goes over the pathways. We've got lots of wildlife. And what I do know is that they done an inspection a couple of weeks ago. So we're kind of like wondering if we'll receive another letter, but so far we've gone a whole year and the plants are still there. Yeah, whole year. The plants are still there, and we haven't removed them. So fingers crossed. That's okay. Yeah. But that's the thing about our house. We have a balcony and a roof terrace, and because that's within, if it's not inside because they're outside, obviously, but they're within our railings, if you like. We can do whatever we want with those. So they're full of plants, but it's just the outside space at the front of the house. But at the moment, I've got chrysanthemums, the ones that you buy in pots for autumn, and then I plant them out. Don't throw them away, just plant them in the garden. They grow next year. I have some beautiful chrysanthemums, growing in the ground. People walk by and say how pretty they are and how vibrant they are. So if the HOA want them all removed, that's absolutely ridiculous. So we've left them and everything's gone quiet for now, but I'll keep you updated.
My flip.
Oh, my flip.
Sorry, I took a while. I've put 2.5 litres down me today.
Thank you for that.
I'm well hydrated, Ellen, honestly. I said to my PT today, I said, I don't have a problem with hydration. Anyway, oh, wow, that's cool then.
Well, for now, yeah, it is, yeah.
Obviously, I didn't hear all of it because I was peeing, but
Okay, well, it's all there and it's all flowering and it all looks really pretty. It's lovely, I daren't put any more in. I want to go a little longer just before I put any more in, but now it's all good. So we get frogs out there, obviously squirrels, which is annoying. We've had deer out the front. There's probably snakes, although I haven't actually seen one. But
I don't know if I like snakes, no.
There's water in front of the house, so I'm absolutely sure that there'll be snakes, but I haven't seen any in the garden. We get
alligators that far up, or not?
No alligators, and no bears either. So we're good. Lots of lizards. So yeah, it's fun.
Cool. Because alligators are really in Florida and higher than that as well, or not?
Yeah, I think they'll come up into South Carolina, but we're North Carolina. None around here. No.
Oh, that's mad.
And there'll be bears up in the Smoky Mountains, but where we are, there's no.
Have you ever seen a wild bear?
Yes, funnily enough, in Florida. So I never knew there was a Florida black bear. And we were staying at Navarre Beach and we went for a walk and there was a whole family of black bears on the road in front of us and we had no idea they would be there.
What did you do?
Turned and walked away.
Oh, did you take a picture?
Yeah, well, my brother-in-law who we were with took a photograph, yeah.
Oh my God, do you have access to it?
Yeah.
I would love to see it sometime. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sure listeners would love to see it as well. Oh, she's looking for it now. Look at this. We can make everything happen for you.
I'm literally looking right now.
I have a supplementary question.
Yeah.
Did you see the wild alligators as well?
Did I see wild alligators?
Yeah.
Alligators again in Florida. Yeah. Not on here. Yeah. Oh, and were we in South Carolina or was that Florida? We went to a Driftwood Beach, and now I can't remember if that was South Carolina or Florida. And we were walking down a little track, and there was kind of like water either side of us, and there was a massive crocodile in there, and I was just like, oh my God. And at my sister's house in Houston, in Texas, they get crocodiles there as well. So yeah, the wildlife is scary here.
Yeah, no, I'd seen wild crocodiles. Or are they crocodiles or alligators? What it's in a certain place?
Don't know. I don't know the difference really.
No, alligator looks a lot more prehistoric, doesn't it? It's a lot darker, but I'm not sure where they are.
No, I don't know.
But I remember seeing wild alligator crocodiles in Sawgrass Park in Florida, but it was like a walkway where you obviously could walk out and then see them, like in the wild, but you were still kind of relatively protected. But yeah, it's just mad, isn't it?
It is mad. And like when we go hiking up the mountains or wherever, like you stay on the trail because there's so many leaves and fallen like trees. There could be snakes anywhere in there. My friend, she was taking photographs of an event. She's a photographer, and she stood up into like a pile of leaves, and her work colleague said to her, "I want you to look at me and do not move." And she said, at him, and he said, "Now I want you to take 2 steps back calmly without doing it too fast." And she was like, "Oh my God." And she then like kept her eye on him and took 2 steps back, and she was literally about to stand on a copperhead snake, which would be pretty nasty if it bit you. So yeah, there's definitely wildlife here that you want to stay clear of.
That is mad.
And once, this is quite funny, there's a place called Grayson Highlands, which is an amazing hike. It's an incredible park to go to. And there's signs up everywhere saying there's bears, and you need to make noise. So you don't want to surprise them. And I was so scared. I spent about 2 hours singing Taylor Swift because I couldn't think of anything else. I just kept Taylor Swift for like 2 hours.
You just play it on your phone.
I don't know, but that's just what happened in that moment in time, and I was literally that's all I was doing.
That's
good
mad.
fun. That's good fun.
Oh,
anyway,
so how are you going to make me do this tidying?
well, I'm gonna just say that if you don't do it, you're gonna get annoyed with yourself later. So do 20 minutes, have 20 minutes off. 20 minutes, have 20 minutes off.
No, once I'm in, I'm going in deep, honestly. I can't help myself, yeah.
Getting it done.
Oh.
I think you need to get it done, Michael.
Yeah, okay.
But if your body says have a rest, then you need to have a rest too.
Mm.
I'm
Cool.
going to have a facial, so I've got to go too.
Racy.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's been lovely chatting.
Yeah, I might log off now.
All right, can you take the pen out of your mouth though?
We have a wonderful episode with Boyd Douglas Davis talking all about the inside hidden world of the garden centre, which I think is very interesting. So I hope you've enjoyed it, Ellen and listeners.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
You listened to how much fun I had with Julia, by the way.
Yeah, I listened. Yeah,
I don't care if you did or not. I think if
I'm
you
not
listen, you'll only be upset.
I'm not jealous at all.
She's
Goodbye.
a laugh, isn't she? Cool. Oh, God, I fancy Chinese now. Unrelated. Okay, I'm going to do this tidy up.
Okay, have fun. Bye.
You're crazy, honestly. Bye. Hey guys, the sponsor for Series 16 of the Plant-Based Podcast is Grow This Not That, which is the Substack by myself, Michael Perry, also known as Mr. Plant Geek. This is the place where you can get all the hot happenings in the hort world directly to your inbox. Every Friday, there's a hort report which brings together the influencer, industry and home gardener worlds, and every Wednesday, I'll recommend 5 plants that you can grow, and subscribers get an extra free as well. All you need to do to find out more about my wonderful Substack called Grow This Not That is go to mrplantgeek.substack.com. Hope to see you there. The music for the Plant-Based Podcast is part of the song Grow by Mikey James, and our editor is Gareth Patch of Semi Echo.